But ladies and gentlemen, the more tragic aspect of this problem is that whereas the United Nations got involved in this problem and created this convention against corruption and to create a mechanism for the recovery of stolen assets, the government of this country in 2005, and you know which government has been ruling in this country since 2004, we should have jumped at it. In some moment of sleepiness, we signed the convention. But the convention requires to be ratified by the government. 5 years have gone by, but we have not ratified the convention. I am a lawyer who draws inferences from circumstantial evidence. I don't practice third degree and get confessions from people. But ladies and gentlemen, it is a reasonable inference that a government which refuses to ratify this convention must have a vested interest in preserving the cover-up for this stolen wealth. It has no interest in the recovery which this document wants to ensure, for the benefit of whom? Not the United Nations, but for the poor and hungry people of every country where there is starvation of this kind and this magnitude. Ladies and gentlemen, I have spoken about this. It is my obsession. There is no public meeting in which I don't speak on this subject. I have called press conferences attended by hundreds of pressmen with hundreds of cameras and television vans. They have heard me patiently. But at the end of my talk to them, I have always told them that you are all honest people who are sitting in front of me. But when you go back and file your stories, your bosses will not allow you to put them for circulation to the people of this country. And that is exactly what has happened. We have tried, some people have tried to speak about it in the parliament of this country. Members of parliament are strangely tongue-tied, ladies and gentlemen. Those members of parliament who are very vociferous about trebling their salaries and their perks of office. They recently got a treble promotion, ladies and gentlemen, treble hike, but they will not speak about the stolen wealth of the poor people of this country. My anguish is that I do not find enough people in this country who can get up, get on to the streets of the country and say, first of all, tell us, why are you not signing this convention? Why are you not ratifying this convention after having signed it 5 years ago? And why are you not seeking the assistance of the United Nations and the World Bank for the recovery of the assets which are said to be stolen? Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that mere indifference may be an excuse for the ignorant and the uneducated, but it is a cruel joke. It doesn't make sense for the rest of us at all. We are parties to this deception which is going on, and we are parties to the larceny which has been practiced. And, ladies and gentlemen, let me share with you one more fact. A fact which took place only last week. The last week, I think it was on the end of the month of August, 30th of August, India signed a protocol with the Swiss federal government. The protocol is not available. The parliament was coming to an end on the 31st of August, that was the last day, with poor attendance of about 15-20 persons in each house. The minister made an announcement of the entering into of this protocol, and he was good enough to present to the representatives of this nation a one-page document containing what he called the salient features of the protocol. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you, it's a one-page document. I won't read the whole of it, but I just want to read to you one paragraph. 1A, 1B. Please, all of you know the English language. Please tell me whether this doesn't sound to you what is called gobbledygook. Does it make any sense to you at all? Can you follow what it means? I am reading it slowly. Information which is foreseeable relevant. What is foreseeable relevant? I don't know. Information which is foreseeable relevant for carrying out the provisions of this agreement or to the administration or enforcement to the domestic laws concerning taxes can be exchanged under the DTAA, whereas earlier information which was relevant only for carrying out the provisions of the DTTA could be exchanged. Please take this paragraph home. I'll ask you to circulate a copy amongst yourselves. Go and sleep over this and please tell me what do you understand. The protocol of which this is a small executive summary, ladies and gentlemen, must be as bad because nobody is interested in the real stuff of having a recovery mechanism of the stolen wealth of this country. Now, look at another clause. Information exchanged is to be used for tax purposes only. In other words, you can't prosecute the thieves. You can't recover even the tax penalties from them. Only for tax purposes. However, the new article also provides for use of information for such other purposes which are allowed under the laws of both states, and the competent authority of the supplying state authorizes such use. In other words, it should first of all be prescribed under the law of Switzerland, for example. We are concerned mainly with Switzerland and Liechtenstein Bank. And they must not only authorize it, but they have the freedom to prevent you from using it even for tax purposes. And if you have no interest in getting that information, the Swiss and these bankers are not gone mad that they are going to force this information on you. But, ladies and gentlemen, today the Swiss magazines are writing that the Swiss are willing to give, but the Indians are unwilling to accept. Why can't you catch hold of these ministers? Why don't you catch hold of this whole cabinet? Why do you not make life impossible for them? Why do you not do something drastic for God's sake? I wish to ask, unless you do that and speak up loud and clear, ladies and gentlemen, India's hunger will not go. The hunger is capable of being ostracized, eliminated from our life. All that you have to do is to get this stolen wealth, ladies and gentlemen. Now see one thing more. All this is supposed to be a treaty protocol on double taxation. Now who is talking of double taxation? Why have you brought this double taxation in? We are not talking of those honest businessmen who have business which is spread out in more than one country, so that by the domestic laws of each state they are liable to pay tax, and we are now making a reasonable provision for them that they should be taxed only in one country and not in both. We are talking of thieves who have no business except crime. We are not talking of people who have stolen money from both the countries. We are talking of people who have stolen the money of the poor Indian and they have concealed it in foreign banks. It is that information which I want. Ladies and gentlemen, let me give you an illustration. There is a gentleman by the name of Hassan Ali. He is a member of the social elitist circle in Pune because he is a racehorse owner. He has a couple of horses which run on the race course, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, I came to know, I'm a criminal lawyer, not in vain. I have friends. I have no difficulty in confessing that some of my clients are criminals. So I got the information, ladies and gentlemen. that the Income Tax Department of India has issued a notice to this Hasan Ali to show cause why he should not pay tax dues. Now please ask me, how much are the tax dues? Please just guess for God, make a wild guess. 37,000 crores. 37,000 crores, what must be the income on which 37,000 crores is the tax? If you have a demand of 37,000 crores against the person, at least attach his 2 horses with the bastard owns. Nothing. He goes around, member of a very elitist social circle in Pune, because he doesn't care. The money doesn't belong to him. The money belongs to some, I'm quite sure on circumstantial evidence that the money belongs to some member of the cabinet. Someday I will disclose it. But today, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to say it in public that this money belongs not to Mr. Hasan Ali, who doesn't care, because he knows that who will recover the 37,000 from me? I have got only 2 horses. That's it. He is a Benami. So, ladies and gentlemen, this document, which has been signed only a few days ago, it says that all information that shall be given will be information about the future and not about the past. So, ladies and gentlemen, even in the double taxation treaty, they have introduced a clause which says that information about the future but not about the past. And we are talking about the past, for God's sake. We are talking of stolen wealth. We are not talking of wealth to be stolen in the future. So, ladies and gentlemen, there's a very famous book. Mr. David Lance wrote that book. The title of the book is The Wealth and Poverty of Nations. It has a very interesting page in that book. In India, power is money, and money is power. Sarah, I was telling you all this, darling. You didn't believe it. In India, power is money, and money is power. India's surplus, once screamed off by the Mughal state and its feudal dependencies, then shifted to the East India Company and its officers and agents. Merchants and civil servants welcomed their inadequate salaries as a pretext for private enterprise and public venality. This is about the British officers of the East India Company. Ladies and gentlemen, Lord Clive, the famous Lord Clive who practically won the British Empire, Lord Clive was the biggest robber. But when I say he was the biggest robber, he was the biggest robber of the time.